Today on StampTV, I'm going to show you a floral card project that's simple to make and can be used for a variety of occasions. Let me show you the tools and products you need to make this card project. First, you're going to need some cardstock, and I am using some of the Gina K Designs Ivory cardstock along with some tomato soup. Then I also have two of the pattern papers from the Shabby Spring 6x6 pattern paper pack. Then you're also going to need some ribbon, and I have some of the Gina K Designs Fresh Asparagus Ribbon in the double stitched style, and this is the 5/8 of an inch width. Then you're going to need a paper piercer or craft pick. This is the Tim Holtz craft pick, and then I have a little piece of a mouse pad right here that I can use to place my cardstock on, and then I have some of our brushed brads from the new StampTV Shabby Spring kit. So I'll put those aside. You're also going to need some pop dots. I'm using the 1/4 inch pop dots. You'll need some cutter bee scissors or some other sharp scissors for cutting some ribbon. Some ink, and I'm going to use the Memento Tuxedo Black ink because I'm going to be using some alcohol markers, and I know a lot of you really like the Memento ink for that. For the markers that I'm using, I'm going to start with a Copic sketch marker. This is the BG10, the Cool Shadow. I also have a Copic original marker, and this is the colorless blender pen. Now for Copic markers, it doesn't matter which style you have, and it also doesn't matter if you mix inks with other types of alcohol markers. They really do work well together, although a lot of the companies don't recommend mixing the inks because they say they don't work as well. I haven't had any trouble with it. And so feel free to give it a shot. It won't hurt your markers at all. Now, I'm using some of the Bic Market markers, and these are the ultrafine point tip markers. They have this really tiny little tip, great for small detail work. And the colors that I'm using are Harvest Orange, Margarita Green, Meadow Green, and Summer Melon. And those are all alcohol markers, and they can be easily found in your office supply stores and some of the big box stores as well. Then I'm using two of the stamps from the Shabby Spring StampTV kit, and these are from the Spring Blessings kit, and also from the Warm Spring Wishes. Sometimes I mix and match those two stamp sets because they come in the same kit and they're really made to coordinate together. So feel free to mix and match those as well. And then I'm also going to use some mono adhesive. To begin, I'm going to grab this small piece of ivory cardstock, and I'm going to be using the Memento ink pad. This is the black ink, and it's not quite as dark as the Gina K Designs Black Onyx, but it's a good black for working with alcohol markers. And if you ink up your stamp real well, you shouldn't have any problem getting a good impression. So I'm going to stamp this right onto this piece of cardstock, and because this is a big stamp, there are chances of having shallow spots. So I really like to put a little bit of pressure on it all around to make sure that I really get a good impression. Especially when it's a detail stamp like this. Okay, so there, now I have a nice impression, a beautiful floral image, and I'm going to add a greeting up here. And the greeting that I'm going to add is the Thinking of You greeting, and I'm going to do that also with the Memento Tuxedo Black because I want the two color blacks to match. And if you use the Gina K Designs Black, it's going to be darker than the Memento. So just kind of stick with the same inks with your greeting and your focal image if you're using black or brown. Excuse my head, I need to get up here. I'm going to place that right up here in this top corner. So there we go, Thoughts of You. So this is going to be a more generalized card, could be sent for a variety of occasions. And I'm going to start to color it using some of these markers. Now the first color that I want to use is this Summer Melon. And like I said, this fine detail point on this marker really makes it easy to color. You can see with the Memento ink, you don't need to do any heat setting at all, and it just starts working right away without smearing, so kind of like that too. A lot of people who've used our black ink have also had similar results, so it's really up to you which one you want to use. I have both in my collection and I use them interchangeably. I use my black onyx for Copics, but I also like to use that black onyx when I'm doing any kind of large, solid image. It's nice and solid and dark for that kind of stuff too. Okay, so I'm just coloring that in a straight color. And I'm going to do this one to match. And again, with this little fine tip, this is one of the things that I really liked about the original Copic markers too, is they have that fine bullet tip. But if you have the sketch markers, the brush side does have a very fine little point. So if you're going to choose Copics to do this instead, you'll be able to do the detail work very well with those. All right. So now I've colored that in. Now I'm going to add a little bit of the Harvest Orange, and I'm going to do that just kind of by following these lines that are already here in the flower. I'm just going to color right over those to give it a little bit of darkness in the center. Like that. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm just going to follow those lines that are already designed into the stamp. Does make it easy. Okay. Then I'm going to go back over that again using that Summer Melon. And I'm going to kind of just blend it in together by coloring just a little bit over the orange and the melon where they come together. So this way you won't actually see the streaky lines, you'll just see kind of a blur of that warmer orange color. And because they're alcohol markers, every time you hit them again with another marker, it reactivates the ink and it's completely blendable still. So that gave me a little bit of blending there. And then to finish it off, I'm going to use the colorless blender and I'm going to pull some color off from around the perimeter, just to make the color a little bit lighter around the edges. My colorless blender is sounding a little bit squeaky. It might be time to refill it. Okay, so there are my two flowers, my main flowers. Now I'm going to go back to that Harvest Orange and I'm going to color in these little buds with that darker color. And I'm also going to color up here and these little things too. Just kind of want those all to be that Harvest Orange. And next I'm going to color some of the Meadow Green I'm going to use to color the leaves. And this is a pretty dark color, this Meadow Green. It's almost like a deep pine. But I'm going to pull some of the color back off using the colorless blender. So let's get these colored in first. I really like the style of this image. It's very whimsical, really pretty and fun to color. Now for those of you that aren't into the alcohol markers, you can use other types of coloring products with these. Pencils, you can use water-based markers, you can even use some of your ink pad ink or re-inker and a water brush to give it a more watercolored look. You can also use chalk pastels. So there's lots of fun ways to color this, and maybe you like all of those things and you'll make a variety of cards using all of those different coloring styles. All right, and we're almost done here. Okay. So now I'm going to pull some of that color off of these leaves using the colorless blender pen. I want to use the bullet side, not the chisel side. And I'm going to just do that toward the center to lighten up the center a bit. And I'm going to kind of follow the curves in the leaves as I pull the color off. And you can see that starting to lighten up right there. It looks nice. And then if you want to add a little bit of that lighter green in there, this is the margarita green, you could add a little bit of that in there. That'll give it more of that yellowy tone. You can add some. And if you want to pull a little bit of that back off, if that's a little too dark for you, you certainly can do that, but it'll leave that little bit of a yellow tone under there, which is so pretty. There. So there is some of the leaves. Now the last thing I'm going to do is grab that BG10, that's the cool shadow, and I'm going to add a little bit of color all around the outside of these images. And I'm doing that because I want it to have a little bit of a watercolor feel, and I want it to appear as though it's glowing a little bit. And this is really fun to do. Dries nice and light, but it gives it just a little bit of a pop. Now, if you don't like the blue and you want to go with something a little bit more neutral than blue, maybe blue doesn't match the rest of your card idea or your card project, you can use one of the real pale gray colors and get a very, very similar look. So maybe the warm gray one, or the cool gray one, depending on whether or not your card project is more in the cool tones or the warm tones. And if you're not really sure, there's also, Copic makes the neutrals, and you can use the neutral one, and that is very kind of in between. It's not cool, it's not warm, it's just plain gray, neutral. So there, I've added a little bit of that watery look behind my images, and there's a couple spots I missed in there. But it doesn't have to be perfect. It can be a little bit outside the images, and that's, you know, outside of the lines in certain spots and inside the lines in other spots. So there is that part of my coloring. I always like to do that. Now I'm going to add this to a piece of the tomato soup cardstock, and I really like the way that Harvest Orange matches the tomato soup. And you can see I was playing around on the other side of this piece of cardstock, and I don't like to waste, so I use every little bit I can. Alright, so there is that layer. Now I have a larger piece of ivory, and I like that real large frame around the back. So I'm going to add that on next, but before I do that, I'm going to add a couple little brads, and those brads are going to go into these wispy flowers here. I'm going to put one here and one here. And this kind of just plays off of the dots that are already designed into those flowers. They look very much like wildflowers. I like that look. But I just wanted to give it a little bit of embellishment on the front. Now, if you don't want to use hardware like brads, you can use a button, or you can use some Stickles glitter glue, maybe a Sakura Stardust pen, or even some pearls or rhinestones if you have those. So now I'm going to put that whole panel onto this larger piece of ivory cardstock. And get that into the center. All right. And there, that is ready for my card front. Now I'm going to build up my card here by using some of this turquoise sea pattern paper along with some tomato soup. I'm going to adhere those two pieces together first. I think I'm going to run out of some tape, but I have more. Tape, paper towels, and toilet paper are things that I have to always have extra of in my house. Maybe you're the same way. Now I'm going to use this tomato soup striped paper that's in the Shabby Spring 6x6 pattern paper pack, but I'm going to make the stripes go the opposite way, and that'll give it a little bit more interest rather than having them both go the same exact direction. And you can try it both ways and see which way you like it the best. And that's going to go across the center, like that. And then I'm going to add a little bit of this ribbon. I'm going to add that down a little bit further onto the card, not right in the center. So I'll put that right about there and flip it over and tape that on the other side. Line it up here. And there we go. Now this whole panel is going to go onto my ivory card base. So I will adhere that on with some tape as well. And I always like to add a little bit of extra tape over my ribbon so that doesn't, have another one, so that doesn't sneak out once I've assembled the card. We want that ribbon to stick down, and by putting some tape over it, that helps keep everything in place and nice and secure. All right, and we'll line that up. And then my final step is to adhere this to the front of this card. And I'm going to do that with pop dots because that ribbon makes it just a little bit raised up in that spot, and the pop dots will be the right amount of height to get this panel to still lay flat, but it'll also give the card a little more dimension. So, 1/4 inch pop dots it is. And then I'll need to pick this up to look at it, make sure it's straight. And I'm going to get it as much in the center as I possibly can at this angle. There we go. And press that down. So there is my finished card project. Let me sneak that up a little bit so you can see the whole thing. Make a bunch of these cards and leave the greeting off. Next time you need a fast card, grab one and choose the appropriate greeting to stamp on the inside of the card. And you'll have a few cards ready to go when there's no time to stamp.